I did get your call, Mr. Johnston,
Okay.
and I finally figured out how to get on.
Okay. No problem. Just wanted to,
It
I
was
knew,
a little different tonight.
oh yeah, I knew for a fact you were joining us tonight because we had talked. So I wanted to make sure that
Mhm.
you got in trouble.
We good to go?
We're good.
Okay, I'm going to call a meeting to order and turn it over to Mr. Johnston.
Okay, we will simply go down through the agenda this evening. We have nothing under program presentations or negotiations. Under number 4, curriculum, we will have a motion on the agenda for next Thursday to approve a Penn Highlands dual enrollment agreement. Again, we have been partnered up with Penn Highlands, Mount Aloysius, and IUP. We will be working on getting the one from Mount Aloysius, but in front of you for next week will be the Penn Highlands agreement. And if you have access into the agenda portal, you can actually see that whole entire agreement that we'll ask you to approve next week.
Mr. Johnston, before we move on to the next item, have you ever shared with the board how many people had the associate degree this year?
Yeah. So this particular year, just to want to make sure that all the board members know, is the largest number of graduates that we had to receive an associate's degree through Penn Highlands. We actually had 10. In addition to 10 receiving the associate's degree, we had another group of students that also took dual enrollment classes. They just didn't take enough to get the associate's degree. So it's the largest number ever out of a single class, this graduating class of 2020, again with 10. Yep.
That's very positive. Okay.
Other questions or comments on 4A? Okay. If not, we'll go to budget and finance. Josh will actually take those letters A through G, or A through H, and then I will take a couple few, and then he'll go back into the budget and finance also. So Josh, can you hear me, or are you having trouble? So let me go through the couple items while they're working on technical difficulties with Josh over on his computer. So under 5I, we'll have a motion next week simply asking you as the board to approve payment of bills for 2019-2020 to finish that school year out. And if we have to, also having a motion to approve budgetary transfers. So that's I and J under budget and finance. That I will cover. Let me go ahead and cover the other items under budget and finance that I will speak of, and then we'll move over to Josh, and he can talk about budget and letters N and O. So letter K is the PSBA membership renewal. We're going to have a motion. It's actually as an attachment in your portal. And again, I know since we're doing the remote meetings, if there's any of these that you're having difficulty getting into your portal and want hard copies, just say tonight, Darren, send me a hard copy or email me, and we'll make sure we get a copy sent to you. So in PSBA membership, you can actually, if you open up your portal, that attachment's in there. You can see there's a number of different items we can get from PSBA. We're going to maintain, if you look at that handout, at some point you'll see 3 check marks in that handout. We're going to do the standard membership, also the policy, maintenance, and administrative regulation package. So there's actually 3 items through PSBA. You'll see there's another 4 that we could get, but we are not going to get those. We're just sticking with the 3 that we traditionally have been getting from PSBA. Any questions on that one? Okay, if not, let me go to letter L. Adminton renewal. That actually also is an attachment in your portal. In that, Adminton is a company that provides Study Island to us. So if you've had students going through our district, you've heard the online Study Island for folks to get on. And I apologize, I keep talking louder because we're having a very strong downpour right now on our roof. So I apologize if you can't hear me. I'll try to talk louder so that you can. But letter L, again, Adminton renewal, and that's for Study Island online for our students. And when you take a look, the total amount for that renewal for next year is $5,906.25. Again, that's an online service that we use with our students. Any questions on that? Next, letter M, Renaissance Learning. Again, it's that time of year. I apologize. We have a few to go through. And Renaissance Learning provides us the opportunity to do online. And I know a number of you are familiar with these. That provides us with accelerated reader in both the elementary and the high school. And it also provides STAR Math and STAR Reading at the high school. The total for the Renaissance Learning is $7,336. Any questions on that? Okay, and I think now we're connected back with Josh, so let's go back to letter 5A, which is the operating budget for 2020, 2021. Josh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can everybody hear me? Perfect. Thank you. The rain was affecting my ability to hear anyone on this Zoom meeting, so I think we got it all worked out. So just in regards to the 2020-21 operating budget, we have made no changes to the budget since last month. So just to give you a refresher as to where we are at on that, at the moment, our budgeted expenditures will be $18,138,395 with a projected use of fund balance of $991,336. So that includes an increase to the an increase to the property tax millage rate to the Act 1 index, which is actually letter B. And so just to let you know, we're currently sitting at 14.176 millage rate. The proposed budget includes an increase of 0.5528, which is the Act 1 index, max under the Act 1 index, to 14.7288 in the 2020-2021 fiscal year. So I'll just stop there for a second to see if there's any questions on A or B at the moment. Okay, hearing none, so I'll just go down. The other ones are pretty standard and haven't changed, so, but I'll just go through them really quickly. There are two per capita taxes. There's still $5 a head per person living in the school district. The realty transfer tax is 0.5% on all transfers of real property in the district. The earned income and net profits tax has not changed. That's 0.75%. And the homestead and farmstead exclusion resolution is included in your packet. That's a standard resolution. The discount and penalty rate is also listed in the agenda, and at the moment that is set at 10%. And then just the next two items, approved to pay the remaining bills for the 2019-20 school year, because we will not meet again. Excuse me, since we will not have a voting meeting before July 1, I do need approval to pay remaining bills and any bills that lag into August for the 19-20 fiscal year, as well as any budgetary transfers as required and as necessary for the audit. So that is, let's see, well, there's two more on here. Workers' compensation, which is letter N. That is a proposal to continue using Church Mutual through CM Regent for our workers' compensation policy. That policy is only increasing by less than $1,000 and is actually, I believe, still in and around the 12-11, excuse me, the 11-12-13, somewhere in there is what those premiums were. So we're actually not even, we're spending less now than we were before. So, and then finally, the medical, dental, and vision rates. Our dental did not increase. Our vision is increasing by about 3 point.
Josh,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Josh, can I interrupt? Going back to workers' comp, I noticed on, it said scheduled rating factor, and it said -3%, and now it's 18%. And it says that it's schedule rating factor reduced, but it actually went up, right?
Y-
Do you know
yeah,
which page I'm talking about? The one that has workers' comp.
yes, that I noticed that too. That's actually
I
I
was
believe
just
that's
wondering if that went up.
I think that's a typo. That actually did go up, and that's an increase in premium that is actually offset by a decrease, by an increase in a credit.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
for those of you,
Okay.
there's
It just
about,
said decrease, and I
sure,
was,
yeah, it's a typo. There's about
Okay.
a dozen
We're fine.
different things that are taken into consideration when the workers' comp policy is developed, and that's part of your attachments. If you notice the PA experience modification piece, you'll notice is a significant discount to our premium, and basically what that means is that we have done everything that we can possibly do to limit our accidents in the workplace. And so we are being recognized for that. And there's a decrease to that. The scheduled rating factor is something done by the insurance company. And as you can see, that is definitely being an increase, not a reduction.
Okay.
And just finally, with the medical, dental, and vision rates, the medical rates are going up 0.9%. I've been here 3 years, so that's the lowest I've ever seen. But basically, I think the consortium decided to, as a whole, decided to keep rate increases to a minimum. You can really only do that for so long before you start to see a substantial or significant increase. So just for those of you who are new or unfamiliar with the way the medical consortium works, basically we pay what we have in claims for the most part. So we are a claims-based medical consortium that is self-insured. And what that means is if we have $1 million in claims, then we need to make sure that we pay $1 million in premiums the following year, at least $1 million in premiums the following year. That's just a very general overview of that, but it's all claims-based. So it's not premium-based, it's claims-based. For dental insurance is not going up. We've been level on that for several years now. And then finally, vision rates are going up approximately 3.9%. And generally on the whole, our vision is a very affordable plan, and 3.9% really isn't that much. So does anybody have any questions on any of those, the budget, the medical insurance, anything?
Okay, so my question, is there anyone that would need hard copies of anything sent to them? Anyone need hard copies of anything? Okay, so we'll move along in the agenda. We do not have anything under buildings and grounds for this evening. So let's move on to athletics. 7A is to approve an extension of the current athletic director's agreement for next school year. That agreement runs from July 1 to June 30th. So there will be a motion next week to go ahead and approve another year agreement with Mr. Malosier. And him and I have talked. Everything's going to remain the exact same thing in that agreement. We're just simply going to be changing the dates from July 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2021. So any questions on that one? Okay, next, approve athletic health and safety plan. So let's talk about that. Let me talk a little bit before we bring up what we're going to discuss. So you've certainly heard in the news in the past week that districts are now required to come up with a health and safety plan for the district. Just as that news had come out, additional news had come out probably another 48 hours after that to require districts to develop an athletic health and safety plan. So there's actually 2 plans that each district's required to do. So I would like to walk through the athletic plan first. I will tell you that we will have a motion for you to approve it next week. What I would like to do is, if you're okay with the draft that you see, that I would load it to the website and simply ask people if they have any questions, concerns, or comments to email me by next Thursday. because I'm going to tell you that both of these documents, in my opinion, are going to be working documents that you may approve each month for the next 3 months. And what I mean by that is just this simply the amount of information that comes out from various sources, either health recommendations or from PDE or from PIAA or from District 6 when it comes to athletics. So I know District 6 has made decisions just a day ago, yesterday, that will probably get released and impacted even more. So I do want to, in order for athletics to start taking place, the requirement is that the board approves plan. So again, please keep in mind that this is a working document. And so let's go down through that so that you understand what you'll be approving. And if you have questions, please stop me. Athletic one, that's the, there you go. Just 1 second, we're going to bring it up on the screen so you can see it. Control at the top. So simply just on the first page, one of the requirements are to just simply talk about the situation with COVID and that the district must take time to put out a health and safety plan so that students and families know what's going on. So simply on the first page is an introduction explaining that. Again, very top, we made sure that we put that this is preliminary because I will tell you this is not the format the PDE wants to see it in because they just released the format that they want to see it in yesterday. So we had already put some work into it and have met with people. I've listed below that we'll publish. Those are the contacts, phone numbers. So just so you know that we've talked with Mr. Malosier as AD, Amber, our trainer, Mrs. Myers. I briefly talked to her on the phone. She's actually away, so she'll look at it even at a later point. Dr. Valia, we talked to her on the district plan. She's also sent me information today regarding the athletic one that I made a couple tweaks to this actual plan already. And of course, Mrs. Dolges is the high school principal, myself, and Mr. Muscatello, we have him designated as our safety coordinator. So all that's listed. So whoops, I'm going too fast. So next, how can I just slide that, Dave? What, just slide? So I can see the next, there we go. So just a couple of things that I want to go down through. Key point that we've got to stress to not only student athletes, and you'll see this will run consistent with our district health plan, health and safety plan, is that we have to get all of us in the mindset as advisors, coaches, administrators, is simply this. And we've pushed people before. I mean, I'll be the first to say that I've come to work not feeling well at times, but in this situation, we've got to stress that you can't do that anymore. And we're going to have to stress that with students. So clearly, we have to all be on the same page. And if there's anybody listening, parent-wise on the outside, listening this evening, our statement has to be loud and clear. Simply this: if your son or daughter are sick, please keep them at home. Please don't force them into a situation that they're here and they're miserable and spreading something to someone else. That is the statement that you'll hear in this plan. It's the statement that you'll hear in the plan later in the agenda for the overall district. Second one is for coaches and staff to create a protocol as to how they'll let vehicles come to any practice that they're conducting. The third one is then how they'll allow athletes to come out, because the whole bottom line on 2 and 3 is this, is that we're supposed to make sure that people aren't congregating in large groups, just hanging around. Of course, you're sitting there saying the same thing as anyone else, so please don't take number 2 and 3 as the wrong way. We definitely want somebody in charge when folks arrive, when they're getting out, so that we know that a couple of things that we're going to say later takes place and not simply just people, up against each other, congregating, having that type of talk. The next one is just for the entire coaching staff of any sport, to know that, keep in mind, a coach may get sick. So we've got to keep in mind that there's a backup plan. We're not at any time leaving the whole sports team show up and there's no one there. If someone gets sick, let's get a protocol. Who's the next person that's going to be told that they need to be there to make sure things happen? That's number 4. Going on to some of the other ones that is here. Number 5 is just simply going through a screening process. So our screening process will be this. There's actually an appendix that we can ask questions. And again, the questions that are coming from CDC that we should ask. But really what it's coming down to is this. When we sit down as administration and we talk to our school doctor, Dr. Valia, and talking to others about the only thing that we can put in place is taking temperatures prior to anybody taking or participating in anything. So we have put in this plan that we'll ask coaches on days that students are not already in school. Again, so let's say, for example, if there's a Saturday practice or we don't have school because it's in our calendar that we don't have school, that on those particular days, that's when these will be in place. You'll see in our district plan that what we have in number 5, simply what we're going to do every school day. So if the school day takes place, we've already put them through the temperature check. We're not going to ask coaches after school to do the same. So number 5 pertains to situations where, again, maybe a Saturday practice, we may have a holiday, but there's still a practice. That's what number 5 is spelling out. Number 6 is just simply everyone stressing the fact of the whole, and you've heard this probably everywhere you've been, the whole washing of hands. One of the things that you'll say you don't want to hear this, but one of the things that we have determined is that we do need to teach hand washing because simply here's usually what people do, and you can just check yourself as I'm going through these. The first thing is you're to wet your hands, but the tendency is that as soon as you wet your hands, you put the soap on, and the next thing is that your hands is instantly and under the spigot or faucet, rinsing it off. So we have to stress to all of our students is simply this: go ahead and wet your hands, get the soap on your hands, but do not put your hands in under that water and rub those hands for 20 seconds, and then you can certainly rinse those hands off. You may think that's elementary. However, I will tell you, as I watch people in the past around here, we don't follow those exact steps. So you'll hear it, and we'll have posters up, etc., throughout the district. Number 7 is just cleaning and disinfecting. And we'll talk more in depth about that when we get to the district plan. Number 8, and I know it'll be difficult for folks. This is even coming from our medical people that gave their input. Individual equipment and personal items should be separated and not shared. Student athletes, actually, we should stress for them to take their stuff home, bring it back with them when feasible, just simply instead of just leaving it lay and allowing a locker room to be their closet. Even in the district plan, we'll probably move to a situation in our locker rooms, even within the building for phys ed classes, that they're going to, sure, you can use the locker at phys ed time, but we're not going to allow you just to store your stuff in there and lock it up because we've got to keep people's personal items with the person. Number 9, and I know these are athletics events. I know they're sports. I get it. But in times that you're not in a situation and we can keep people at distance and it's feasible, remember to do that. Next, number 10 is to educate health and safety protocols should an athlete be sick. What we will talk to coaches about is that we simply want either Amber, our trainer, to be notified, or anybody that's on that chart above with the phone numbers to make sure that we're all notified so we can move and do the job that we need to do. Next, number 11, regularly communicate, monitor developments of local authorities. I mean, if new news comes in, if the health department calls, clear back when we had whooping cough, Mrs. Myers would always get notified by the Department of Health from our Indiana County office if we had a case. So I'm sure that will continue. So as we get information, we will certainly share that. Again, it'll be with coaches. We certainly will not share that with players because of confidentiality. But as we have that information and then a coach needs to know that, by all means, we'll share that. Number 12 is that we have to stress, and I know again, we've always provided, certain number of water bottles, etc. But we're going to have to ask every student, an athlete, to make sure they have their own water bottle and that they come to practice or to an event with that. Next, number 13, activities that has exposure to saliva. And again, you're probably saying, hey, I've been in a sport before. I know, I get it. But these are recommendations, and we should just at least speak to our athletes and our students if they're in during the day to reiterate the fact that, sharing of gum, the whole 9 yards, you've done something with your hands. The next thing you're licking your hand, etc. So that's why that's listed. Next, and I know this is difficult too, for all of us, it'll be in the buildings and also out in sports, and that is just avoid shaking hands, the bumping, high fives, etc. Number 15, for us, just to remind all the coaching staff, if someone does become sick, that we actually then are using gloves, etc., to take care of that immediate situation. Number 16, it's also, we do have students that do have special needs, meaning a health situation. We will collect all that and make sure that the coach knows it, that they may not have immunity to certain things. We'll make sure we communicate that to the coach once we see the roster and see who's on there. We'll communicate that to coaching staffs. Next, we certainly will in the very near future. If we're talking about temperature checks, we do have all the thermometers. They arrived today. So we are very well equipped with those. We'll make sure that they're not difficult at all, but we'll certainly meet briefly with coaches so that they know how those are used. And number 18, and I know this will be difficult for all of our booster groups, but this isn't our requirement, but we've placed it in there. The concession stands or other food must adhere to the guidance of business and restaurants. So that one will be difficult. Simply on down through, so those are just general for everyone. So a couple things and sources that we use so people have an understanding of why some of these things are in place, why we'll move in different order when we go through the county colors that's designated. Just simply the National Federation of State High School Association Classification of Sports have indicated that and grouped sports according to high risk, moderate risk, and low risk. And you can see what some of those items are. Certainly the high risk ones is listed there in the examples, moderate risk, and then of course the low risk are at the bottom. I won't go through those word for word, but it's just a grouping because it correlates on down through the document to our different levels. So slide down there. Yep. Okay, so levels of participation. We'll just have to make sure all of our coaching and AD knows this, is that, and again, they go by colors. We do have 4 levels because there's 2 different levels of green. First level 1, if we're ever in the red, that will certainly correlate with us even not being in the buildings. So there will be no in-person gatherings allowed if we go back to red for the district. Coaches will certainly be able to communicate electronically, just like teachers will be able to communicate electronically through Zoom, Google meetings, anything of that sort. We don't want to get in a situation the last time that we were in red and we just basically cut people off for a while. We've gone through it once, so we're coming to learn that even if we're in the red, we're still going to communicate electronically in any situation we can. Level 2 corresponds with the yellow stage. You will see that, and again, this will carry over to the district plan when we are in level 2 yellow. When it comes to athletics, we are not to have groups larger than 25. So again, you can tell that when we're in the yellow, that we will definitely be in a situation that we cannot have other teams or other schools coming to work with us, that we will strictly have to be within our own group of students. And if we're a sport that has more than 25, there may have to be a situation where 25 goes in one direction on our property, another 25 goes another direction. And again, I won't go down through all those workouts and limitations, et cetera, but under level 2, the whole idea of 25 and no visitor teams coming to our property will take place if we're in the yellow. So let's go ahead and move on down to green. And again, cleaning, we'll talk more about that when we get to the district one, because some of this is redundant. Level 3 green. Again, because there's 2 levels, you'll see the difference is that, for example, football and level green do 7-on-7s, those types of things. And then there's going to be another level 4 green where we completely open up. So that's why you'll see 4 levels in your attachment or here this evening. Again, the whole key point behind the yellow level 2, is to look at 25 in a group. The same way in green, our limitations now become, and you can go ahead and slide down to level 3, Dave. Level 4, again, that's opening us up, that we're going across with other athletes. Things are lifted. What happens, and just so you know at this point, we are in green, but with the green, we're really in green level 3 at this point. So what I mean by that is that we're under a 250 participant cap, so to speak. If you've looked at the governor's regulations, he clearly has said at this point, he has not opened up K through 12 sports to any spectators. So if we go on down, Dave, there's going to be tiers of, well, before we get to tiers, transportation, we're going to have to take a look at it. But if you look down at number 3, again, the social distancing before that, everybody's heard about social distancing, but we have that in the plan. So we have 3 levels of tiers of people. Again, stipulation in the green is you can't have more than 250 people in any one place. Governor has regulation out right now through K through 12 that we're at tier 1, which means that athletes, coaches, officials, event staff, medical staff, etc., can be there. But at this point, he has not opened it up to tier 3, which are spectators and vendors. So now, I would hope that when we get to tier 3, that we see that the 250 goes away. But if it doesn't, we could be seeing a lot of sporting events taking place without spectators, which I know will not set well with people in the community or across the Commonwealth. But I do know from District 6 meeting yesterday, at this point, District 6 is going to require that any event taking place on a school property that is under District 6 is that they are going to require us all to hold at 250. And what I mean by 250 is that includes everybody that's participating. From the clock manager, that's one of our 250. From a coach, that's one of our 250. So it is going to come down to the point of we're going to have to make choices. If the governor keeps that regulation in, we can probably maintain it, meaning that our athletes will be there, all the people in tier 1 will be there, might be able to squeak in tier 2. And again, if we're required to do all that, by all means, we'll have to look at some way of putting that out, just like we're putting our board meeting out. But that is what we're up against at this point, is that we're in tier 1 in green. So those are the things that we have listed that we'll have to take a look at. If you want to go ahead and scroll on down, Dave, we'll talk about some of the other things. Within this plan, we're also to make sure that currently no overnight or out of state events. The statement is that those may change. The board can make decisions later on. Of course, in our document, we're required in all of ours to make sure that we have the symptoms for everyone to know. You've probably seen those lots of times. And scrolling on down through, we just end up getting into on down in our appendix, just as actually a chart for us to record the types of things that we'll ask coaches to check. And again, it'll be in a situation where if that's the immediate first thing in the day that the students attending, we'll ask coaches to do that. So I don't know if there's comments, questions with that. If there's other concerns that you've heard of people in your community when it comes to athletics. I know we'll probably talk a little bit more when it comes to the district plan, but in order for sports to take place and move forward, we need to pass a motion at least that you understand what's in this one and that you're okay with what's there so far. Again, we may next month think that something needs to be changed, etc. But at this point, that's what we would move forward through. And I don't know if there's any feedback, comments from anyone.
So where are we right now? Level 1? No.
Right now, we're level 3 in green.
Level 3 in green.
Yes.
Yeah. Level 4. And we have no choice. I mean, this sounds like most of this stuff has been dictated, mandated, whatever word we want to use to us.
Yes.
Between the state health department, the CDC, and District 6, right? I mean, where it says cleaning facilities, is that wordage we put in, or does that come from higher ups?
Yes. So a majority of what we're being told, you need to understand, are guidelines. So there is no requirements or there is no mandate. The only mandate out there currently is from the governor stipulating that K through 12 sports can take place and activities related to those can take place, except for the fact that he clearly has indicated at this point there can be no spectators. The rest are guidelines. Those guidelines come from CDC, the National Federation that we have listed within that plan, and also talking with our school doctor and the advice that she has given. I will tell you this, that Bucks County, I'm sure you've seen in the news, clearly come out and said for reopening schools, not particularly with athletics, but with schools, we find a tendency that, and again, there's CDC guidelines and things of that sort, but you'll find that our actual local health department has not indicated that they would put out their requirements from anyone. So I do have to say, Mr. Hardesty, everything that's listed in there is suggested guidelines, and it clearly comes back to all of us as administration and board as to what we feel comfortable in our community. And you're going to hear numerous news stories, I'm sure, as districts move through developing both of these plans and scratching your head and saying, well, what is right and what is wrong? I will tell you that I hear mixed messages everywhere from superintendents, from health people that I ask their advice. But I will tell you this, every single person that I talk to is that we've got to get in the mindset, if someone's sick, quit encouraging them to be in the building, because if you clearly know they're sick, don't have them here. Besides that, everything else that's listed there have been suggestions and recommendations. I will tell you this, though, that even today, the Secretary of Ed indicated that more regulations and more guidance will be put out next week. That's why I want to say to you, sure, I know community people want to know what we're doing. So I think that we owe it to them to say that we are working at it, that it will change. And I mean, I have to be honest. I think that we will look at this in July. I think we'll look at it in August, even though we have it posted to our website, and we'll keep changing it as we move forward because we've put things in place. You know, coaching staff or everyone may come back to us as administration and board and say, well, okay, we understood that you wanted this and we're trying to follow it, but do you understand that we can't really even do that? We don't want to get to the point that we crank it in too much, but in turn, we want people to realize that we don't want sick people here. And the only thing that we could think of truly as administration and even talking with Dr. Valia and things of sort is taking that temp check. And again, that doesn't solve all and clear all either, but we certainly want to send the message of if you're to the point that you have a temperature, we don't want you here. We want you to go home, get well, and then come back.
So these are guidelines. They're not regulations, right?
That is correct. The only regulation that's out there at this point is the governor has said no spectators are to be at sports at this time.
Okay. Now we're to assume that after they get a cure for this, then we can take that and just throw everything away and go back to normal.
It is my understanding that at some point we will get back to the normal, that teams will cross over and go right back to, and that's why we have the level 4.
All right. Because what I can see happening is this still being in place after there is a cure or this goes away, and somebody gets the flu and we didn't check everybody's temperature, and then there's a lawsuit.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
I just don't want this hanging around after this is over. So
Right.
I hope that as soon as this is over and we go back to normal, this gets ripped up and we go back to normal.
Absolutely.
None of this lingers on.
Sure. And as a board and administration, we can make that decision and say, at some point, we send the message out there, hey, we're clear back to normal. We are not taking temperature of anyone. And again, we have to feel comfortable as a board. If we have a board that says to administration, hey, we don't think the checking temperatures is a good thing to do. You may say that. You may say, well, you still can't catch it all. I'm just saying, after listening to everyone, if there's something there that helps us do any type of filtering, the only thing that I can think of is taking temperatures of everyone. And again, I'm not taking temperatures currently right now to say, oh, well, if you have a temperature, you have COVID, because that absolutely may not even be the truth. They may be sick from something else. So all I'm saying is taking the temperature just actually keeps everyone that has a fever at home. That's about the only thing that I can think of as a precautionary type thing. For example, some people can talk about wearing masks. Well, okay. I'm just saying, again, I'm not quite sure how many student athletes we could say you need to be wearing a mask while we're having practice, or wearing a mask while we're asking you to do this and do that. And looking at all that and wearing gloves and all that, but I do think, is there one thing that as a district we can do? Well, we can check temperatures, and that would keep people that we definitely know are to the point that their body's fighting something, or they wouldn't have a fever. It's just a precautionary to keep people away. But you may give me the advice, because you're going to hear some districts that are saying that they're so large that they can't even just physically think that they can do it. So we could say and remove that from any of the 2 plans that we have this evening. But honestly, that's the only thing when it's checking an individual that I think that we can use. And I don't know what everyone's thoughts, comments are.
When I know we haven't got into the school aspect, and that's the next one, I think.
Yes.
But when you say take a temperature, Darren, you said you've come to school sick at times.
Yes.
Will you have your temperature taken? Will everybody that enters the building have their temperature taken?
Yes, that will be the plan.
That's during school, but not necessarily at an athletic event, just the participants?
Correct.
Band?
Well, so
those are my questions. Where do we go?
Correct.
If we're allowed to have 250 people is one thing, but that's still saying that there's possible, or a very big possibility of something spreading. So I would think that would be covered under that. I would say the only time we don't take temperature is when it's completely, we're green level 5 or whatever it is.
4. Yep.
Or
Yep.
so, okay.
And I agree with you. That's the only thing I think I know of that we could physically, and it is still going to be difficult, but it's the only thing I think that we can say to, parents, to family, to say, hey, we're making sure that if this student's coming in, that they don't have a temperature of 102 or 103 and their body's fighting some type of infection.
Now, this document that we are looking at is a requirement by the state,
Yes,
right? You didn't come up with it on your own to say, I want to do, let's have this. The state's requiring it. Is that correct?
that is correct. Because it was my
Do,
thought.
do they also approve it after we approve it? Does it go to the state, or are they just requiring we have one on hand that is approved by the board?
Correct. So you are correct. So let me track a little bit. So my thought was when the first requirement come out that we were going to have a district health and safety plan. When I think of a district health and safety plan, I'm thinking of everything that happens in a school district. So just a few days later, after that requirement was put in place, that is when the next requirement come out that said every district must develop an athletic plan. It must be approved by their board in order for sports to reopen. PDE does not want it sent to them, the athletic one. However, they are requiring that the board approves an athletic reopening plan and that they post it to the website. The district health and safety plan that we'll talk about shortly is a requirement and it's covering a number of other items that I'll show you shortly. That particular plan is required to be approved by you. It's also required to be posted to the website, and that's the particular plan that's required to be sent into PDE.
So could we just say athletic, we're going to do one sentence, we can do just everything that seems possible? I'm not, I'm the one that voted against us approving school bus vehicle numbers. It seems like a lot of this is a lot of requirement that nobody except us is to be policing it.
That is a fact.
So the safety director, Josh, is in charge of this?
So first, we'd be looking at Mr. Malosier
Okay.
We have those in place, that we have a professional development meeting with all the coaches to explain to them the things that we were asking them to do. And again, so let me tell you a couple of things that we'll be doing is that we would ask if it is the first thing that a student is attending for that particular day, we would be asking them to do the temperature checks. We would ask coaches to keep in mind to do social distancing as much as you can, but you know what sports are like. I mean, everyone must know what they're like. And all we can do is to ask them to try their best. A couple other items I think that we can do, but it takes everybody out of their routine. If we ask people to, come prepared for practice, don't think that you're going to keep everything in a locker room for weeks on time, because all that's doing is just bringing more germs. So that's going to be different for people. And as Dr. Volley explained to us, it's probably something that we should always have been doing and not allowing any locker room to get to that point that people just keep leaving stuff. So I can't say that some of the things that's being suggested aren't good things that we should always be doing. Is it going to take time to take temperatures? Yes, but I think we've come up with the actual handheld one to the forehead that's the quickest that we can do. But again, all that is just one step filter to try. And you may say as a board, hey, listen, all that's too much. Again, we just have to keep in mind that we have in our district, and for me talking to people, I've encountered people from the left that says this is all a farce, that there is no such thing as COVID, clear over to a person that I've talked to that's worried about, even if we do put all these things in place, should I send my child? And then I have everybody in between that. So is this a plan that's going to solve everything? Absolutely not. Is it a couple things that we put in place to help filter the situation? That's all I can tell you that it is. I mean, I can't, there's absolutely no guarantees that we'll have a person that we will never encounter that gets it. I even asked that to Dr. Volley and asking her recommendation as a superintendent, and a number of us have talked about this. So what happens when we have our first case? Is it a situation that you know, I make the decision and that the district is shut down, and talking to people, the answer to that is no, that I'd be overreacting. Should we get, you know, 10 cases at the same time, then that's not me overreacting. So I also have to get people used to the fact that, you know, we still may have someone that is diagnosed with it, that they go through the steps that their doctor is telling them to go through. And we do the cleaning and the disinfecting in the area that they were. But if I have one or two, you know, they're all telling me, oh, don't go to the point that you're closing everything. Use common sense, allow those people to be out, keep them out, disinfect. But again, I have to keep in mind as the superintendent, I'm hearing and listening, and those are the recommendations I'm getting from the health officials. But I also have to keep in mind is I don't know what the reaction is going to be to parents when they hear the first case happens. So that's another unknown. So in thinking of all that, that's why looking at these guidelines, I at least have to say that we're trying and attempting to do something to help filter the situation and protect.
Sure.
Again, it's not
The goal is that we do all this and nobody gets COVID, and then it's a successful program. It doesn't necessarily mean if no one gets it that it wasn't out there.
correct. Correct.
Well, don't you miss the day that the big decision was whether to let the band go to Florida or not?
Correct. Correct. We thought that was a bad day.
Yeah.
That's true.
Hey,
Other
Can we put a sunset clause in it? Like this is in effect until July, 2021.
Sure, we can do anything to this plan.
I would say we put a sunset, until a cure is found and put a date, July 15th, 2021.
Okay.
I just don't want this thing dragging on after this.
Sure. And again, we can edit this. You can adopt a version every month. I guess I would recommend this, Mr. Larch, and I understand, and I'm totally with you. I guess this would be my suggestion. We approve this one in June. I would say we go no later than August and give that a date. I would just ask that you give me, because I know there's something coming out next week more. So I would just ask that we at least have it approved in this next meeting. Take a look at it, the July board meeting. We can even set the date there if we feel comfortable. I just wouldn't want to set it at this first one. But again, every month we can bring it up and set it. I would just like a little bit more time to see what more information I have to put in it or any more information that we get. But again, that's just my thought and that's my request to you. I mean, as a board, you may say, no, Darren, let's put this in now. We get it, but we want to end it July 31st. I mean, I'm okay with that. I'm just saying things have shifted so much in the last 6 days. I'm watching it and I would like it to settle a little bit before we give it that final date. That's all. Other questions, comments, concerns? Does anyone object to me putting it to the website and then asking anybody that if they have concerns, they can certainly email me. And as I get concerns, I'll certainly share them with you. Would you like it to be handled that way? Or are you comfortable with what's there? And we just move forward. Comments?
I'm comfortable with that, Darren. I think that's the right thing to do.
To post it?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm ready to follow your lead on it and give you that space to monitor it.
Okay.
Yeah, I am as well.
Okay.
But are we going to put a date of August 31st on this first one? And
That is your choice as a board. I would recommend that we wait and do that in the July board meeting, put a date to it. But again, if you all as a group say, Darren, I hear you, but you know what? We need to give a date to the community, and I'm okay with that too.
No, I'll wait. That'll be good.
Any other comments, questions?
I'm comfortable the way it is too.
Okay. Here's the only thing that I want to say and to be thinking. And I just hope the restrictions change, meaning the whole 250. Because think about this, folks. If the 250 never goes away and we are able to do interaction with other schools, it's going to be difficult. And what I mean by that is maintaining 250 when you have, let's just take football, for example. Football involves cheerleaders, the football team, band, and you know how large of a group we get. What segment of that population are we saying is not going to be there? And I don't ask you to answer that right now because I can't answer it. I'm just saying, if that regulation doesn't change, it'll be difficult.
Aaron, you'll have people looking for parking places 2 days before.
You're exactly
You know how they put blankets on their seats
Right.
earlier?
We'll have
Well,
cars.
they'll be putting cars in spots where they can watch the game.
You're probably right. Any other questions, comments? Okay, moving on the agenda then, transportation, we have nothing, public relations, nothing, policies. Let's take a look at those. First one is a revision to 0.661. It has to do with attendance at meetings via electronic for board members. And you can look at this in the portal, or I can send you a hard copy if you need it. Simply, what it's doing is putting into that particular policy where in the past it has said board recognizes that factors such as illness, travel, schedule conflicts, weather conditions can make impossible physical presence for a board director to be at a meeting. So now throughout this whole policy, now we're adding emergency situations. So that type of wording is in there. Also, it is putting towards the end of that policy, the whole idea that should we have a health or state, county designates an emergency, that board meetings can take place electronically because overall, majority of the board is supposed to be physically present. Even if we get to the point that we have all of the majority of the board members back in, this policy also now adds that a school board director can request to the board president to be able to join electronically. The board president then can give that particular board member the authority to join board meetings, whether it be committee or business meeting, to join electronically. The only requirements in the policy, should the board president allow someone to do that, are these, and that is that they request to the board president 3 days, at least 3 days prior, that they want to join electronically. The other is that they can join the meeting here and, be able to listen and be able to hear everything. The other is that they make sure that they stay for the entire meeting. So those are the stipulations, the things that's been added to that. So ultimately, it's now actually catching us up with the times, that if we have an emergency, and also then if a board director has a need, they can request to the board president to join electronically. Those are the revisions in that particular policy. The next one is 626, and the only thing that's being added in that's fiscal, that's federal fiscal compliance. So that has to do with all of our federal funding. So simply, it's allowing the revisions in bold that is there, allowing us that if we've used federal funds to pay someone, all that we've gone through in the past few months, that we could, it allows federal funds to be spent to continue to pay that person. So that's basically what's in place and the revisions to that policy. The next one really is not that's really doing anything to the policy. It's actually adding an attachment to policy 335, and basically it is spelling out that has to do with FMLA, and it's just spelling out that someone because of the coronavirus can use FMLA to be away from work, whether it be for themselves or a family member. So it's just an attachment that indicates and explains that to them. So any questions on those revisions or that attachment? Okay, seeing none. Going down through correspondence, we have nothing.
I'm sorry, Darren.
Yep, go
I
ahead.
see emergency on the addition, reason for absence, emergency paid sick leave, da, 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 da. Those are not these are MFLA guidelines?
Correct.
Or these- Okay,
Yes. Yes. So that's
so we really don't have a choice on that.
correct.
Okay.
Yes, you are.
Enough.
Okay. Any other questions on policies? Since we're electronically, if I go too fast, just yell at me. Don't be afraid. Next, under new business, Aaron, guest teacher agreement. That's also an attachment. We do that every year. The cost to participate is $400, and that's training. And then they collect all those folks and send them to our direction. And again, just so you understand, those are individuals that have a 4-year degree, not necessarily in education. And the whole idea that that program was created was because of the shortage of substitutes who are certified in education. So this program allows a person with a 4-year degree in anything to actually come in and substitute. Questions on that one? Okay, next, approved student assistance program letter of agreement. That's also in the portal for you. Nothing has changed. That allows an individual to come from the guidance center to work with the high school student assistance program. You can see a liaison comes out from the guidance center, sits in meetings periodically with the SAP team. Mr. Grimaldi coordinates that particular program. So you can read everything. Actually, nothing has changed in it. Just make sure that we are agreeable for that person to continue to come to us. And what happens is in those student assistance programs, if there's mental health needs or things of sort, then that's a liaison that comes out to us that also in turn goes back into the guidance center and works with that particular student or family. Questions on that one? Next, approved tenure from Mrs. Brody. And if anybody has any particular questions, we can talk about that in executive session. But she has met all the requirements for us to have a motion to approve her tenure next Thursday. Next, 12D is to appoint school solicitor. Always in June, we appoint a school solicitor so that they can start the new fiscal year. And again, Mr. Saffron has submitted his letter at my request to continue to be our school solicitor for the next fiscal year. And again, the proposal that he has there is the exact same as the previous year, same amount and everything.
Mr. Johnson, just a quick comment. Mr. Safford has been with the district since June 11th of 1992. So this is his 28th year, going on his 29th year with the district. I'm not sure what the celebration is for having the same solicitor for 30 years, but whatever it is, we should be sure to have it.
Yep. And I will tell you this, just so that you all know, Mr. Saffron will take any question from me at any time. So I will tell you that there's never been a time that I've left a message and he hasn't gotten back to me. I appreciate the support he gives me. I just want you to know that he's that on top of things, and you all know he certainly is detailed with his work for sure. Any questions on those? Okay, so
I just looked it up. Pearls are a 30th anniversary thing. I'll go out and buy some pearl onions for next year and we'll go there.
Okay. Good idea. Any other questions before we move to the district safe and healthy and health plan? Okay, just give us a second till we get that one pulled up. So this one was the actual original requirement. And I honestly thought that athletics would just fall under this, but they did not. So administration wise, we've gone through this. And again, this is certainly not the format that PD wants it in, but I wanted to make sure that it was in sections or buckets, so to speak, so that you understand the requirements or questions that they have us going through. So we've clumped them into groups. First is operations, next one's education, next one's communication, and next is health services. So simply under operations, we're going to talk here a little bit about the types of reopening that the Department of Ed is asking us to look at and to consider of how we'll open. They're asking us to come up with a pandemic contact person or team. So we'll use the team method by all means. Talking about cleaning and sanitizing, we'll talk about that, and ventilation as we go through. We'll talk about our socialization and things of that sort. Can you just go back one, Dave? Sorry. Social distancing, we'll talk about that here in a minute. Education-wise, professional development, everything from coaches to teachers to who's going to man, checking temperatures in the mornings for us, to plan lessons, how we'll talk about that with a one-to-one device. Communications, how we're going to get all that out. We'll certainly do emails. Just for example, putting these two plans up, I'll ask people to email back. We'll put a sapphire notice out saying both plans are up. Please review those, give comments to my email. So we'll use the website. We'll put out documents, etc., information so people know what's going on. Health services, by all means, talking about social distancing, hand washing expectations, etc. So there's the format and plan that they want us to use is so difficult and lengthy that just chose not to put it up here for you to understand, or for anyone. Actually, the website for us, I'm actually thinking we'll put it up in this version, so it just makes sort of a little bit of sense. Okay, next. So under operations, as we talked about, so as we go through each one of these slides, I just took out of that template that they're talking about that each district needs to do, pulled the requirement, put it in the left box, and then on the right is all the discussions that we've had administrative wise. We also, again, had school doctor involved in taking a look and giving us suggestions. And again, before we go through all this, the key is this. We're just simply going to be stressing, if you're sick, stay home. I mean, that's just the ultimate that you'll hear me repeat time and time again, because that's the best safeguard we can have. But again, looking at the requirements that PDE wants us to spell out so our community can see. And again, this plan falls to the shoulders of administration and board, and we are to come up with and post to the website what we feel is comfortable and acceptable to the community to help the situation. So with that said, let me go back again and say, PD wants us to have a coordinator, wants us to have a team. Then they have a variation of how they want us to open. So let's talk about the team first, even though it's at the bottom box on the right. Looking at taking the team approach, just simply because we're small enough. We're certainly going to involve the nurse when making decisions on anything, along with our health assistant, us as an admin group. When we're talking about a plan and asking for people to review, I'm going to go ahead and send this actually to Mr. Schobert as the president of the association to get his thoughts. Probably also send it to Mrs. Bassbinder as representation from the support staff. And again, we'll post it. So any parent that wants to comment, by all means, give us feedback. So looking at the options of opening up, PDE gave us the 4 to the left in the box. If we continue to be in the green, our plan is that we're opening, and we will be open on August 26th. That's our plan, meaning that we'll have every student coming to the building, and we're going to talk about other measures and other things that we will do to assist us throughout the plan. But just know if we are in this green phase right now, we are planning to have all of our students here. If we go to the yellow phase, let's talk about that. So yellow phase in this situation and the requirements that we'll talk about shortly, there are requirements and stipulations to the yellow phase, meaning that we are to reduce the number of students in a space, things of that sort. Well, in order to reduce, you have to reduce your enrollment that's physically here. So we have come up with taking a look at bringing part of the students in a group on Monday and Tuesday, another group, the other half of the population in on Thursday and Friday. using Wednesday as the opportunity for students to still come in who have internet access difficulties connected. And you may say, well, boy, that's not much of an educational setting. But keep in mind this. First of all, if we're in the yellow phase and we're to cut down and have social distancing, we have to cut our population down in half. That is not to say that education is not going to continue, because if you recall, that was the whole idea of coming up with the technology plan that we did, that we put a device in the hand of every student and teacher. So just because this group A, let's say, comes in on Monday and Tuesday, does not mean that they have Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday off. It's the fact that they're going to have their Chromebook and they will still be keeping up with particular coursework with teachers and communicating back and forth. Same way with the Thursday, Friday group. Just because there's Thursday and Friday that they're physically here does not mean that we're not expecting them to use their Chromebook and complete work and communicate with teachers on the other 3 days of the week. You'll also know that that there will be certain, towards the end of this slide presentation, we have to always look at students that may have particular special needs. So administration's already talked about there's probably certain group and high needs of individuals that we may even have them come in all 5 days of the week, just simply because, and again, I'll spend more time when we get there because of why we would be doing that. But a majority of the population, in order to get to the yellow phase and cut the population down, that's what we would have to do. Now, with all that said, clearly, I can understand from Representative Struzzi, from Senator Pittman, that the idea is that we're ready and we want schools open. We're all about that. We do too as administration. I know you as board want that to happen too. I'm just saying if we get to the situation that this county turns to yellow, here's the problem and the log jam that's going to be created. So there is absolutely no authority given to the Secretary of Ed of this state to waive the 180 days. That is all controlled by our legislators. So at this point, legislators are saying we are not giving the authority or changing the 180-day requirement. So keep that in mind for the next thing I'm about to say to you. So the only variation that his administration has right now will be those 5 days of flexible instruction days that you approved last month for us to apply for. So if we change to yellow, we only have the authority to do what's listed there for about 10 days, 2 weeks. During that 2 weeks, something's going to have to give, or legislators are going to have to move, because our hands are tied and we're log jammed in that case. Because after we use 5 flexible instruction days, we do not have the authority. We must have students in our buildings or we're closed. So if we're closed and we've used our 5 instructional days with the way the law is written right now, we are then waiting and sitting for anything to happen, and we tick the clock and a school year could go to clear to June 30th. So I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm not trying to, I just need you to understand that's the log jam that we're in. Meaning that I clearly understand I want students back. You want students back. Families want students back. I get it. That's the way we want to operate. This county changes to yellow. We have about a variance of those 5 flexible instruction days. But after that, someone is either I'm in a position that I have to close and hope and pray to get back to green so that we can move, or the legislators are going to have to get themselves together and say, we're changing the law just as we did this past few months. But right now, there's no flexibility and no one indicating that they're giving the Secretary of Ed that flexibility for this coming school year.
So yellow phase, Monday and Tuesday are in-house for that group. And then they're all, quote, off or not in-house Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But
Correct.
they are not considered at school during that time because they have responsibilities and work to do on the Chromebook? Is that what we're saying?
Yes. So the way the law is currently written, it does not give a physical brick and mortar school the authority right now to allow remote learning to take place. And I know what you're saying. You're sitting there saying, well, Darren, we have cyber schools across the state that does it every day. And you're right, because there's a cyber charter school law that allows them to do that. It does not allow brick and mortar schools to do it. So what I'm saying is, and by all means, I don't know who on the outside is listening, but superintendents are absolutely in a bind should we get into the yellow phase. And again, by all means, maybe our legislators want that authority that to force us to get back in. We're in the green. I get it. I mean, we're all about kids. We're all about teaching. Why would we not want them here? I'm just saying they better be ready in action that if the county goes in yellow, I have the authority to use about 5 flexible instruction days. After that, I have no choice but to close, or they're going to change the law like they did just a few months ago that allows us to have flexibility. And again, they can do that. And maybe that's their plan, that they will do that. But I just need you to know right now, the authority that we have as a school district is that we can do whatever we want in green. We can keep moving like we would in a regular school year with other things we're going to talk about. But if we, as soon as the county switches to yellow, I have about those 5 flexible instruction days, and then I'm in a log jam. And again, legislators may come running to get the logs out of the way, and I hope that we all can work together and come to that resolution. But I need you to know right now in this point in stage that that yellow phase, I really only have control for about a week and a half in the yellow phase. Does that make sense?
I guess there's 4 types of reopening, you say.
Yes.
Total reopen, scaffold reopen, blended, and 100% cyber. That's different than what would happen in yellow. So if we were in green phase, you could have blended with alternating days and weeks?
Yes, yes. You can tell me, absolutely. You can say to me, Darren, even in green, we don't feel comfortable as a board to have administration to move forward to bring every student in green. So you could say, we don't feel comfortable for our community to do that. So you could say to us, listen, administration, you get ready that on August 26th, even though we're in the green, we want you to be doing 100% remote learning. Or you could say to us, hey, start out the school year already with what you have listed in the yellow phase. Or you could say to us in the scaffold opening, which would mean instead of looking across the board and only allowing certain numbers in the yellow phase, scaffolding is that we would pick certain grades, meaning that we may say even number grades, you're coming in. Odd number grades, you're coming in. Or again, total opening.
I'm from the state and I'm here to help you.
Sure. I just feel at this point, and I think administrators do, and again, by all means, that's why we're going through this. If you're talking to community people and people saying to you, hey, we're just not ready to do every day, now's the time for us to have that discussion and hear from anybody so that we know. But honestly, I think with the regulations that are in place for the green phase, my recommendation is that we open and have everyone come in all 5 days with the other things that we're going to talk about here. Questions, comments? Okay, let's go to the next one. Oops, I went backwards. Sorry. So next, one of the things that requirements is that they want us to consider, talk about cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting, et cetera, et cetera. So here are the things that we have talked about as administration. And again, this top bullet, we can talk more specifically in executive session because it has to do with personnel. But in looking at the requirements and what other school districts are doing and the recommendations for this period of time coming up, we are suggesting for us to consider hiring 2 3.5-hour cleaners to cycle through our buildings to do things as cleaning all those high touch point places, for us to go around, taking and assisting us in cleaning up in cafeteria situations. And you may say, well, Darren, we're just going through budget problems and we have a deficit. I mean, I'm hearing you. It's just that when what's put in front of us, and to know what happens in a high school and what happens in an elementary school, I would feel more confident and telling families that we're cleaning up and we're moving and doing the best we can as we get through this. You need to also know, as a board and anybody that's listening, it would be my recommendation, just as we've talked about the athletic plan. At some point, we may not always keep that. And I know it's not difficult to furlough people, but we may get to a point, if we would decide and you're agreeable, to hire those 2 people. And at some point, we may say that we don't need them. But looking at everything and talking about everything that we need, and again, you may say, well, 2-3.5 hours, what does that mean? That would be having somebody come in the morning that could go through both buildings for 3.5 hours and then bringing somebody else in after that. Again, how would we pay for that at this moment? We've taken a look at our CARES funds. We could do that for a year, and we can talk about that in executive session more as to what that cost. But it is our recommendation as administration that we would do that. And again, the details, because it's personnel, we can talk about that in executive session. But when it comes to cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting, we just felt that that was a need. Next, we will put disinfectant wipes throughout every classroom in the district, hand sanitizers in all the high school classrooms. And you may say, well, Darren, wait a minute, we have an elementary school. But just so you know, every single one of our elementary classrooms has a sink right in it. So you hear loud and clear, promote hand washing first. At the high school, we do not have sinks in every classroom. So that's why we have up there that we will put disinfectant wipes for everybody across the district to use. We'll put hand sanitizer stations in every single high school classroom. We have them. Elementary, again, they will have the wipes, but we're going to actually promote the hand washing at the elementary, since every single classroom has a sink. Students are permitted to bring their own supplies from home. And you may say, well, why are you doing that? Because some people are allergic to certain things, and we just want to be flexible. We want to make sure that we're educating and making sure that people wash their hands and things of that sort. But if there's something that's, that some parent or child has learned that they're allergic to, we want to give the flexibility that they can bring something in themselves to use. Probably the next thing that's helped us, and some other school districts not, is that we already have put in place water fillers, because one of the high recommendations is that all water fountains, that means the nozzle where you put your mouth down to it, are turned off, and that water fillers, of course, will be on, and we'll promote that to happen. We'll also make sure that every student we ask them to bring their own water container, just like athletics, but the water fillers will be on and using constantly. And again, we've just listed, because this is a cleaning type thing, that we'll ask Mark and his crew to make sure those are up and operating all the time. Any questions on that item under operations? Okay. Another that PDE has in for us to make sure we take a look at, and probably a plus for us, is what we've already gone through. So there are things that make me feel good when we look at this, because a lot of superintendents can't say this, and that is our ventilation system. We're even to the point, as Mark has indicated, going through the project that we've gone through, everything from the hallway, the NPR, clear over through to the ag classroom, that is all new. And even to the point that he can even read it daily anytime he goes to his computer. Elementary, we can't read those all on a computer. Now, certainly we have some controls, but it's the actual that they're physically operating. So we are going to ask, we'll monitor them every day. We're just simply going to ask teachers, you walk in your room in the morning and you don't hear that ventilator, make sure that you're contacting Mr. Dalton so that we're right there. Again, all the filters is recommended that they're changed 4 times a year. Mr. Dalton's already indicated that that's what we do. So when it comes to ventilation, I think that we're good. Questions on that one? Next, classroom learning spaces. You probably are heard of the 6 feet distance. So let me talk about all those as we go through. Another PDE has clearly indicated that masks are optional. So let me talk about everything that we've listed over on the right. So in the green phase, we will try to do all the following. And again, we're going to go to the World Health guideline, and that's 3 feet in classrooms. We're going to try our best, and we feel confident that we can do that in those spaces. If in the yellow phases, if we get to the yellow phase, again, with yellow phase, the guideline. Go ahead. Somebody have a question?
No.
Okay. Yellow phase, if we get into that grouping, we can then meet the 6 feet requirement the CDC recommends. So just know we're shooting for the 3 feet when we bring everybody in green. And in the yellow phase, we feel because we're going to be limiting half of our enrollment with about 13 students in each room, we could space people out to the 6 feet. So that's why we would feel confident if we get that log jam out of the river, so to speak, that we could continue on more than 5 days in the yellow phase by rotating people and also abiding by the 6 feet. Mask, we've talked to many people, and our recommendation is that masks are optional. The only thing that we're going to ask is our food preparation group to make sure that they wear masks, just simply because their food preparation and they're right out over top of everyone's food. So that is the only group that we're going to ask at this point. Again, we will change policy. One of the things we have to do is change policy because masks are an option. So if people want to, by all means they can. So we'll have to change the policy in our handbooks because we stipulate in there that you can't, unless we designate a TAT day or things of that sort, we've ruled out that you can't wear bandanas and that type of thing. So we're going to have to clean up that policy so that it allows folks who do want to wear masks that they can. So any questions under that particular slide? Okay. Next, restricting use of cafeterias. So let's talk about those because those are our largest spaces. In the green phase, we are to watch again, whether it's a sporting event or any place in our building. The maximum space is 250. So as administration, the other stipulation is about 25 in a classroom. So that if we take a look, our problem with a high school is this. When that bell rings, we know we have 445 students in that high school. So we know that we're going to break that every class change, the 250 in a space. Now, you may say, well, there's some people on this side of the building in the hall, some people in the building on that side of the hall, but we've thought of everything. We just cannot come up with, and if any of you can come up with suggestions, the exchanging of classes at the high school is the one that is the only place that we're worried about when it's coming to that 250 max. Cafeteria, here's our plan under the green. At the elementary, we'll open up the full entire MPR to space the elementary students out so that they are not shoulder to shoulder at times in the bench. So that gives space. At the high school, how we're going to expand over there is we do have an outside area. So on good days, we'll have the option that people can actually go out into that courtyard and eat out there. The others is that the hallway, we've thought of another space, and that is if you would come into our lobby and you're walking towards the auditorium, you have the auditorium on the right, high school doors on the left. We are going to actually close off the hallway to the left, clear down around until the boys' locker room. That gives us a tremendous amount of space that we can actually add tables and chairs the whole way down that hall. And you may say, well, how are you moving students to the other classes that are in that square? Well, we're just going to ask all the other students to go to the right and go to their classroom. But during the three lunch periods, we would actually use that hall space, just giving us more space to have people so that they're not completely shoulder to shoulder. Should we go to the yellow phase, that changes things because we're to cut our population in half. So the maximum occupancy in one space in a classroom, we'd be looking at 13. We think that we can get to that. But a couple of things, schools, I just put this comment and it's almost nearly impossible sometimes because the school building wasn't built for this. So when it comes to lunches, elementary students, we're going to ask them to eat in the classrooms if we're in the yellow phase. And you may say, well, how are you going to do that? So we're going to continue with the lunch meal style that we have right now. We would make sure that we switch to that so that we can move meals to the elementary pods, keeping them in their classrooms. High school then, we would take them and divide them in half using the high school cafeteria and the NPR. Again, that's to get us that if we're in the yellow phase, then we need to feed folks because all those numbers drop in people in spaces. So those are the thoughts that we have in green and yellow when it comes to a classroom, and then also in our large spaces where a lot of people typically are. Questions on that slide? Okay. Next, hygiene, the whole practice. Again, probably the most important at the bottom. We will stress the fact that we want you to stay home if you're sick. Again, we'll do a temperature check in the morning. We are going to send students home. And I'm going to be honest with you, Mrs. Myers has been using that actually as the criteria all along. It's just we have not emphasized that out to everyone. No matter if we would have been in this situation or any other time, we simply just don't want people here if they're sick. So really, if anyone showed up in the nurse's office, had a temperature higher than that, she was calling home, sending this child home anyway. So back up through to the top, talking with Dr. Valia and meeting his administration. Students and staff will be encouraged to wash their hands throughout the day. One of the things that she stressed, probably the 2 times, meaning Dr. Valia, saying that she would strongly suggest that 2 times the day would be immediately when people come in, that they wash their hands at the school day and also prior to lunch. But again, asking people to do it throughout the day, but those are 2 major important times. Others to consider when we're doing instructional things, particularly at the elementary, and they're using scissors and markers and things of that sort. We've listed other things that are there. For example, limiting the use of the items, coming up with other activities that you really don't have to use all that. Others is that Mrs. Zeglin thought about having Ziploc bags for each individual student and their belongings. Clearly, let me emphasize that Dr. Valia clearly indicated us start thinking about families, and you may be scratching your head. And she said, as much as you can keep that particular group of 20 students together, continue to do that throughout the day as much as you can. She wanted to emphasize to keep that in the back of our minds every time that we're thinking about doing something throughout the day, is to try to keep that same group together. A little easier to do that in the elementary than the high school. You've all gone through and you understand how high school changes, but we will do our best. And then we'll have those hand sanitizer stations throughout the building. So questions on the hygiene educational part that they're asking us to make sure we do? Okay, next, they're also asking to make sure that we post signs dealing with all the hand washing, the whole symptoms of COVID, etc. So there's tons online. So as administration, we're going to pick about 3 so that we're consistent across the building. And we'll come up and pick the 3 that emphasizes everything that we think should be the educational piece. And then we'll locate those throughout the building, and particularly the high traffic areas. Next, identifying and restricting non-essential visitors and volunteers. At this point, starting out in the fall, we've already talked about if we come up with that all the criteria of can't have a group more than 250 for green. So to be quite honest, now we're in a situation where at this point we'll not invite families in for lunches at the cafeteria time like we have in the past. We'll probably not have back to school night this fall because again, if you've ever gone, particularly at the elementary school, there are a lot of people in that building, over 250 by far when we have that. Yellow phase, if we get into that particular situation, of course, we won't have assemblies. Keep in mind, when we get to the yellow phase, we've moved from the 250 to the largest groups. We're supposed to have groups of 25. So that goes back to even the cafeteria, where we've moved students into keeping them in the classroom at the elementary, dividing high school up more into the two larger cafeterias, trying to get that number right back to their guidelines and requirements of 25 if we're in the yellow. Other things that we've listed, again, is our cafeteria workers with gloves, masks, things of that sort. We'll have to do the same thing with our common cafe that we have up at the high school. We're going to have to limit, clearly we've heard from all of our medical advice, look at the people that you're sending out during the day to other areas, limiting the CBIs, that's community-based instruction for special education students, our field trips and things of that in the fall. Hopefully we can get to the point that we can open that back up, but at the beginning, we would not have those in place. Areas identified for meetings with visitors. Again, because of what we've done in the past, I feel very confident the way we're set up. Our visitors are stopped at every single one of our, I'll call it safe rooms, at all three of our entrances. So what we've done in the past has positioned us in a good position for today. If we have to have things such as special ed meetings that needs to be in a larger group, we're thinking about using actually this particular boardroom instead of the office of Mr. Ray because of how close it is there. So those are the things that we're identifying to the community that we would have to change during this moment of time. Questions on any of those? Okay, and I know this is a lot, but we're coming towards the end of the agenda. Handling sports activities was another requirement because this is actually in the district health and safety plan, which is originally why I was surprised when we got the requirement that we have to have this individual athletic plan. So we're going to skip over that one because you've already heard what's in it. Staggering for spaces and hallways, particularly with buses. We've already talked about bus unloading and loading. We'll do those at one at a time now. Elementary halls, when they're moving, the floor tiles laid out lovely. They've already have most of them trained anyway to walk the blue line, which is we have blue lines on both sides of the hall with tile. And again, entire NPR being used for our lunches instead of just half of it. So those are just large spaces that we thought that we could take a look at. And again, just so you know, we have talked about all kinds of things, you know, in the high school of trying to say, you know, we've listened to other high schools that they've considered, but everyone's dropped it, trying to make students all go the same way in the hallway, et cetera, et cetera. We just don't think that that's going to be doable. I mean, we can suggest it. If you say, hey, administration, make it happen to that level, we'll do it. But we just think it's going to be a very difficult struggle class change wise. Adjusting transportation. We are going to talk with Tri-County. We do have one or two buses that do have 3 students to a seat. We're going to ask, what does that look like subsidy wise back? If we say to you, we only want 2 students in a seat. So I'll try to get that answer in the next couple of days. If we go to half enrollment, if we go to the yellow and do half enrollment, that'll help in the bus situation. As administration wise, we need to take a look at what that looks like. I will be perfectly honest with you. We don't have the details right now, what that looks like in balance, because we've got to take our seniors out of our demographics. We've got to bring our kindergarten that's coming first to us in pre-K. So we still have to look at the details of that. But if we go to yellow and do half enrollment, that will help alleviate the number of people that's on the bus. Questions on that? Okay, next, limiting the number of individuals in classrooms and learning spaces. Again, green classrooms, we feel that we're good. The only exception, and again, when it comes to green and somebody singly in a classroom of that space, we just have a handful of high school social studies classes that exceed that 25, 26 in a classroom. So just wanted you to know that, pointed out. Yellow classrooms, good with half enrollment. And again, how we'll handle the lunches in the classroom when we get to the yellow for the elementary, both cafeterias for high school. Any questions on that? Next, coordinating with local and anything else that we partner up with. So just so you know, we do have Evergreen After School Club with us. Coming in the next few weeks, they'll be operating the week of July 13th and July 20th remotely. We will bring them into the building of the week starting July 27th, also August 3rd, 10th, and 17th. The disappointment is that because of all the financial constraints of the state, our program in United will end on August 28th because the state has not opened up a new cohort to be funded, and ours expires. And you may say, well, what can we do? We've even gone to the point that money was saved because we have not been operating that club since March. So we ask, or Kathy Montco from the IU has asked on our behalf if those funds saved could be used to take us through to Christmas break, because we feel we have enough funds to do that. And by that time, we was hoping that a new application would be open that we could apply for more funding. The answer was, no, you cannot use that funding. We're taking it back. So at this point, the cohort of us and United will lose the club after August 28th. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that. Questions on that? Okay, next, monitoring students and staff after they have symptoms, etc. That 72-hour rule returning to school may change as I've asked for different agencies to give me the protocol. So what I mean by that is, let's say, for example, if we have somebody with a fever that we've identified in the morning, we've sent them home. At what point do we have them come back? Some of the things I've read is that they can come back in 72 hours. Again, that may change. So I just want you to know, I have a figure that is a guidance right now. That may change based on other people. And again, we're going to encourage people to just please self-monitor yourself and stay home before you even come. I mean, the last thing as administration and staff is we want to do is make people uncomfortable that someone comes to school and they have a temperature of 103 and we're irritating people and saying, you know, we don't want them here. They need to be home resting in the way. We don't want that to happen. So our communication will also be to please help us. Next, isolating and quarantine, folks. We'll set up areas besides the health office if we need to. Should we get someone that we need to quarantine? Because again, we could identify somebody with fever, and it isn't always as quick as that you can get an adult to say, "Oh, come and get your child." And the last thing we want to do, you know, we've even considered the fact of, okay, well, we'll take the person home. Well, okay, you can put this sick person in the vehicle with you. Now you're sitting in their driveway because you cannot put somebody at home and we can't without an adult. So, so we would definitely have to keep them here to get somebody to be with them and come and get them. Questions on that one? Next, returning isolation, quarantine staff, students, and visitors. Again, the discussion has been that we would ask if they have a fever, have a high temperature fever, that they bring a medical excuse back. So we're debating on number of hours or medical note. So you may see that change. Again, we are going to do the daily temperature checks as they get off the van or bus. Employees will be as they, and I need to add that, employees would be as they enter the building. Questions on that one? Okay.
Darren, so the students will be checked as they come off the bus.
Yes.
And if they have a temperature, how do we get them back home? By bus, by parent? Will they be taken to a whole area, to the nurse's office? How have y'all thought that one through?
So once Mrs. Myers returns back that I can communicate to her, I've sent her an email. We're going to talk about, of course, we'll use the nurse's office, but it may be a situation after she comes back. And we've discussed this. Our problem is where our nurse's office is, it may not be just the best place to put anybody that we've identified in the morning, that we've walked them through the building, and now they're actually in the center of both buildings. So it may be a situation of it becomes, if we identify somebody, they may be coming to the room, this boardroom that I'm sitting in, because it's the most isolated one out, and it's actually in the middle of both buildings. So my guess is, once I talk to her, that this is going to become the room, because it's just isolated the most from everybody. Again, we've talked about, okay, we can ask Tri-County to have ready available for us to take them home. Our problem is, is that we fear, again, you know, we take the student home, we get home, and there's nobody there. So it's going to have to be that we hold the person here and have somebody come to get them.
What if it's someone that's driven? We have our student drivers. Would they just be sent home?
Well, we would make the contact because that's happened before. I'll be honest with you. If the nurse has deemed someone to be sick and they've driven to school, if the nurse feels confident that they're okay, that they can drive, we've got permission from the parent to say, okay, they're leaving now. Please make sure you call us when they get there. We have done that. Other questions?
Hey, I got a question. You keep saying, which is smart for everybody that doesn't feel good to stay home. Did the state loosen up their absentee regulations and laws?
They have not, but here's the funny thing, Mr. Larch. So they are asking us, and which us as an admin, when we go to do student handbook changes to present to you in July or August, we know that. We've got to go back and look because PDE is recommending to us to go back to our attendance policies and make them more lenient. So we will be coming to you with in July or August with that. We have not had the full discussion of what that looks like yet, but it is a guided note from PDE that administrators in all school districts should take a look at their attendance policy and make it more lenient. Other questions? Okay. How will we notify in any changes of the colors of the county, any communications of us, you know, closing, doing the hybrid? How will we do that? We'll continue to use our Sapphire notification system. And I believe the last one, there's the last one, but my clicker isn't working, Dave. It stopped on me. Okay, last one. For requirements from PDE, protecting students and staff with a high risk. We talked about this at one point earlier. So we will meet with Mrs. Myers. We can take a look in our system. Those that's in that second bullet, you know, students with asthma, people that have compromised immune system, things of that sort, or some other complication. We will make sure that we contact those families here in the very near future, honestly, to set up an individual plan. And we do have students. I mean, we've already talked as administration. We know already, without confirming with Mrs. Myers, students that we already have in our mind and on the list, that we're going to have to set up individual plans with them. In those cases, we're going to have discussions with them. You know, do you want your student to wear masks because of that? Do you want them to eat even in a separate room from whatever we've already designed? And going back across to the left, then if we do individual things like that, you know, we're going to have to ask staff to do some things different. So those are other things, particularly the PDE wants to make sure that we realize is that we have students with high needs and how we're going to handle them. So our plan is we're going to call, basically speak with each family and come up with a plan in each one of those cases. So those are all the requirements within the plan. Again, it's a much longer document with paragraph after paragraph. But we just pulled the requirements, stuck them to the left, and then started talking about our topics. I will certainly meet the mandates of the template that PDE is requiring us to do. It'll be a lot more verbiage and explanation with all that. But the key points we've tried to point out. And again, if you're comfortable with this, I will certainly post this, and I'll probably still tweak and put more explanation to it before I put it on the website in this format. But again, I would certainly put it out. And again, asking families certainly email me if they have concerns or thoughts or even suggestions. I mean, they may be a parent sitting at home saying, well, but what about this that we have not even thought about? So we would welcome any of those types of things too. So questions or comments or anything on the entire plan? And again, from this week to next week, if you're out talking with folks and ask them, I mean, if there's things that they feel or think that we should do as a district or take a look at, by all means, we're open. We'll certainly take a look at it. Questions, comments? I know that was long. I apologize. But again, that same plan, we can revise it. It's going to be a working document as we go through the next couple months. So feel free. I mean, we may get to the July board meeting and say, oh, we need to add this. And we certainly will. Questions? Next, I just want to, and we'll talk about this in executive session, but it will be in the item that we'll talk about, and that would be increased work time for Mrs. Stewart. Again, we'll talk in executive session since that's personnel. Also in executive session, just for next week, we will, just so we can tell the community, it's a requirement that in executive session, June of every year, that the safety coordinator give a yearly report in regards to what's taken place safety-wise the previous year. So Mr. Muscatello will have that report. We'll do it in executive session next Thursday, right after the regular voting meeting. Any other questions, comments for the open meeting? We do just have a couple of things to talk about in executive session, but is there anything that we need to discuss in the open meeting? Okay, if not, Mr. Packer, that's all we have for the open meeting.
Okay, if you could just hang on for a few minutes while Dave gets us connected or disconnected.